So a welt pocket looks cool, but a curved welt pocket looks even cooler. You can contour it to the shape of your body, really creating interesting style lines in your design. And where are you gonna put a curved welt pocket? Well, anywhere you put a welt pocket or a pocket in general. It could be on the breast of a jacket, it could be on the bottom of a jacket, a dress, a skirt. You can put a pocket, well, just about anywhere you want. And I was inspired to make this video because over in the sewing club, we made a vest this month. And it has regular welt pockets, but I was thinking how cool would it be if it had curved welt pockets? And if you haven't heard about my sewing club, well, you should check it out. If you join, you get an exclusive pattern every month, pattern hacks, and sewing lessons. Each garment is like a whole sewing course. So much information. Plus, it allows you access to the Sew Anastasia Discord channel. And if you're not familiar with what that is, kind of like a Facebook group, but cooler. It's a place where you can connect with other sewers and share your projects or ask questions. It's a lot of fun, so I hope you check it out. There's a link down below in the description. Okay, enough about the sewing club. Let's get on to this curved welt pocket. The first step is going to be printing out your pattern so that way you can follow along step by step. But you don't have to print out the pattern. You're still going to learn how to create a curved welt pocket by following along. So you'll be fine with or without the pattern. Now that the pattern's printed, it's time to cut it out. So these two pieces here, you're just going to cut all the way around the outside of them. Make sure you cut them apart, this little band in the middle. They do not go together. And now that we're over to this one here, the cutting template, we're gonna cut this one out a little differently. We're actually gonna cut out the middle of it. I want you to fold your paper in half so that way you can snip into it. And now you're gonna cut out the entire inside of the pattern piece. And now we're all cut out. So now we have all 4 pieces cut out. We've got the welt here, which is cut to self, cut to interfacing. The pocket bag is cut 1 on fold. And then we have the facing piece here. Notice that it's cut 2 interfacing and cut 1 self. And then we have the cutting template. You're not cutting out any interfacing or fabric for this. And I just want to mention real quick that there are so many different ways you can sew something, right? But I'm going to show you my favorite way to create a curved welt pocket. Now that we have our pattern pieces cut out of paper, we want to cut out our fabric and interfacing. Once you have everything cut out, you should have all of these pieces. For the welt pattern, we have 2 interfacing and 2 fabric. For the facing, we have 1 fabric and then we have 2 interfacing. We want 1 big piece of fabric to be able to put our pocket on, and then we have 1 pocket bag. And this big piece of fabric here is going to be your project, your skirt, your jacket, etc. I'm just going to be creating a sample here for you today. Now that everything's cut out, our first step is going to be fusing our interfacing. All right, let's do some ironing. So I have my muslin on the bottom of my ironing board. I'm not gonna be putting muslin on top because I really want you guys to see what I'm ironing, but obviously I always put muslin on top so that way you don't get glue on the bottom of your iron. So I have the interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric. There's my facing piece and then both of my welt pieces. So I'm just going to seam these on. And I have a lightweight fabric, so I'm using a lightweight interfacing. You always want to use an interfacing that's comparable to the fabric of your project. Now for this other rectangle, you're going to put it on the wrong side of your project, wherever it is you want your pocket. So I'm going to take this little template, and if I want my curved welt pocket to be right here on my project, I'm going to make sure that that interfacing is on the wrong side of my project in that area. And now we can steam that on. Now we're all done ironing interfacing. Now we're going to place our facing piece in the same location we placed the interfacing on the back of the project, but we're going to place this on the front of the project, making sure the right side of our facing is on the right side of our project. The easiest way to find where this piece of interfacing is on the outside, because we can't see through our fabric, is to take a pin and stick it through the corners. So you're going to end up with 4 pins going through the corners here. And now we're going to flip it over to the right side. And now I'm just going to mark those 4 little spots with my chalk pen here. And now I can remove those pins. And now I know exactly where my facing piece needs to go. So this is gonna go right side down, so on the outside of our project. And we're gonna line that up there. We can put a few pins in it to keep it together to make sure it does not move. Now, once you have your facing piece down, you want to take your cutting template and place it on top. This is going to be where we end up sewing our curved welt. So make sure you have this lined up on here exactly where you want it. I suggest weighting it down. I'm not gonna weight it just so it doesn't get in the way of you seeing. And we're gonna trace this little template out. This is the one that we cut out in the middle. And now when we remove it, we know exactly where we need to sew for this curved welt. Now it's time to head over to the sewing machine and start doing some sewing. I'm gonna start at the top corner of my welt and follow my blue chalk line here. I'm going to backstitch at the beginning. I've already engaged my needle down button, so every time I stop, my needle is going to be in the fabric. So we're gonna work our way down to that corner, needle in, foot up, and turn, and now we're carefully going to follow that curve. You get back to where you started, backstitch, and cut. So you can see we've stitched right along the template that we traced out there. Now we're gonna do some cutting, but I want you to take a look at that facing piece and notice how there's cut line in the middle, and then we have these triangles that are cut. That's to release the tension in the corners. So we're going to cut exactly that. You can draw this on, or you could trace it out by pre-cutting that and tracing it. So those are going to be our cutting lines. So I'm gonna fold this in half and put a cut in the middle, and then go ahead and cut up to the tip of that triangle, and then down to the corners. Now, the trick to making this turn out really nice is cutting directly to that stitch, but not through that stitch. I'm gonna turn it around, and now we're gonna do the other side. It doesn't really matter if your cut in the middle is perfectly center or not. It's just to open up this facing piece. Now what I want to do, because we have a curve here, is either cut down the seam allowance, or you can cut some chunks of fabric out of it to release the tension. So you can go ahead and cut some triangles into this. Or your other option, get that out of there. It's kind of looking like a jack-o'-lantern, isn't it? Your other option is just cutting down the seam allowance to about 1/8 of an inch. You can do either method. Once you make this pocket a few times, you're gonna have a method that you prefer that feels comfortable for you. So you can do either way. Just to make it even, I ended up cutting off the other side. Now it's time to iron this facing to the wrong side. So we're gonna take this facing piece and we're gonna flip it to the inside. So I'm just gonna turn this over right now. And we've got these curves. So you gotta make sure you roll these curves in between your fingers and that the seam pops out. And now you wanna make sure you pull out your corners and flip the inner curve over as well. So let's just iron one part at a time here. First, I'm gonna do that top curve. If you feel like any of your corners are getting caught or bunching at all, it just means you need to snip a little closer to that point. So your corners should end up nice and smooth when you turn them. I just flipped it over so that way it'd be a little easier for you guys to see here. So I'm just ironing everything nice and flat. So we're done ironing. If we turn it over and take a look, we have that opening area completely finished off with that facing. And now it's time to sew that welt together. Now we're gonna sew the welts together. We're gonna place them right sides together, and we're going to sew just the curve with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm using my 1/4 inch foot to get a nice 1/4 inch seam here. We're just gonna sew all the way around this curve. Back stitching at the end and cut. Now we're going to clip into the curve to release the tension in it, so that way we can flip it and iron it and get a nice smooth curve. Now we're gonna head over to the iron and we're going to iron this curve nice and smooth so that way we have a nice clean seam here at the top. So now we have this curve nice and ironed, and these little extra corners that pop out, you can cut those off or you can leave them. It doesn't really matter. Now we're going to take our project and flip the wrong side face up, and we're going to take our welt and we're going to place it over the opening here. We're going to cover up the opening. Now what we want to do is line up this curve here at the top and make sure you have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both ends here, because we're going to need to go back and sew that later. So once you have that lined up there, you can take it and flip it over. And now we're going to sew from the front. So what we're going to do is sew down the side, around the bottom, up the side, and we can sew across the top too as a little edge stitch detail. You just want to make sure you don't catch that welt in there. And as long as you sewed your curves real nice, they should match up great for you. And we're going to pin this down to make sure everything stays in place while we're sewing. And now we're ready to sew. I'm going to start at a corner and work my way all the way around those edges. And I'm going to be adding a little edge stitch, so 1/8 of an inch or closer to the edge. I want you guys to get as close as you can to that edge to reduce the bulk at the flap here. We don't want a big flappy lap seam there. We want it to be nice and tight to the welt. When you get back to where you started, either fix or add a few back stitches. Look at our welt. It looks so cool and it's curved, but can't put anything in it yet because there's no pocket bag. To attach the pocket bag, we're going to flip it wrong side face up. And now what we're going to do is attach part of the pocket bag to the top up here, where you should have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So right sides together, and we're going to sew these 2 layers together all the way across. We're going to be sewing the top here with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So when I fold back the top, you can see what we just stitched here. When we lift up the inside, you can see how the pocket bag is sewn to the top here of this pocket. Now what we need to do is attach the pocket bag to the bottom. So we're going to fold this back. And now we're going to take the pocket bag and place the right side to the other end here. We're also going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So we're sewing up that bottom of the pocket bag with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now we're going to sew the sides of the pocket bag. The easiest way to do this is take the sides and flip it back. And now you can see exactly what we need to sew up. Now it's really important to go through all these layers and catch this little triangle bit in here. If this is hard to do with your regular foot, I suggest putting on the all-purpose zipper foot on the left side. I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. I have put on my all-purpose zipper foot here on the left side and move my needle position all the way to the left. So when we get to the top, it's going to be much easier to sew close to the base of that triangle there. So you can see that little triangle flap that we cut earlier, and we want to sew right over it all the way up to the top. This is closing our pocket. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side, but I'm going to start at the top so I can keep the bulk of my pocket to the left, and I can see that little triangle to make sure I catch it. Make sure you're back stitching here at the beginning and the end, and just work your way all the way down. Back stitch and cut. Our curved welt pocket is finished. Check this out. No straight pockets over here, only curves. So we have this curved welt here, and if we pick this up, you can see how we have the curved pocket shape. We have our pocket bag, so you can put all your goodies in there. When we flip it over, you can see our pocket bag and all of the work that went into creating this curved welt pocket. Wasn't making a curved welt pocket way easier than you thought? So by following this tutorial and the simple steps, you too can make a curved welt pocket. And don't forget, you can download the template at sewinganastasia.com. So I hope if you haven't tried a curved welt pocket, that you'll try one. And if you're working on one right now in a project, well, I would love to see pictures of it. And if you have any questions about creating these curved welt pockets, leave it down below in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And let me know, what other kinds of pocket videos would you like to see? Leave that down below in the comments too. And don't forget, if you're in Chicago, come on into the design studio and take some sewing classes with me. Or if you're not in Chicago, check out my online classes in my sewing club. And don't forget, the curved welt pockets look awesome on our new vest pattern. And don't forget to follow me on socials, that way we can stay connected and creative together. And those Instagram stories is where it's at. I'm always posting what's going on in the studio and our new projects. Thanks so much for watching today. Bye!